Hello, my fabulous second graders now. I know that I'm no longer your teacher, but I thought I would maybe record some stories here and there to get you through the fall while you're still learning from home. Now, we read this one in class twice, and I actually got to hear Kwame Alexander talk yesterday, and he was amazing. So I wanted to read this book to you, The Undefeated. And remember, it says by Kwame Alexander. And remember, by means the author. He's the one who wrote the words. And it says illustrated by Kadir Nelson. So Kadir Nelson is the person who drew all the beautiful pictures. This is for the unforgettable, the swift and sweet ones who hurdled history and opened a world of possible. Who do we think that is? The ones who survived America by any means necessary. And the ones who didn't. This is for the undeniable, the ones who scored with chains on one hand and faith in the other. This is for the unflappable, the sophisticated ones who box adversity and tackle vision. Who shine their light for the world to see and don't stop till the break of dawn. This is for the unafraid, the audacious ones who carried the red, white, and weary blues on the battlefield to save an imperfect union. The righteous marching ones who sang, "We shall not be moved," because Black Lives Matter. This is for the unspeakable. This is for the unspeakable. This is for the unspeakable. This is for the unlimited, unstoppable ones, the dreamers and doers who swim across the big sea of our imagination and show us the majestic shores of the promised land. The Wilma Rudolphs, the Muhammad Alis, the Althea Gibsons, the Jesse Owenses, the Jordans and the LeBrons, the Serenas and the Cheryls, the Reese Whitleys, and the undiscovered. This is for the unbelievable, the wee real cool ones. This is for the unbending, the black as the night is beautiful ones. This is for the underdogs and the uncertain. The unspoken, but no longer untitled. This is for the undefeated. This is for you, and you, and you. This is for us. The end. And then in the very back, it says, this is for the unforgettable. Jesse Owens, who was a 4-time Olympic gold medalist in the 1936 Berlin Olympics. He was considered the fastest man during his lifetime. and his athletic victories helped shatter the myth of white athletic superiority. Then it says, slavery. Slavery in the United States was the legal institution of human chattel enslavement, mainly of Africans. Although the importation of enslaved Africans was prohibited in 1808, domestic slave trading continued, driven by the labor demands of cotton plantations. Slavery existed from the early 16th century to the end of the 19th century, a span of over 300 years, and was legally ended with the ratification of the 13th Amendment in 1865. Jack Johnson, also known as the Galveston Giant. Jack Johnson was the first African-American world heavyweight boxing champion. Despite facing racial press at the height of the Jim Crow era, he successfully defended the title 17 times. Romare Bearden, known as America's foremost collegian, was an artist whose work often portrayed African-American communities. In 1987, he won the National Medal of Arts. Zora Neale Hurston. Zora Neale Hurston was a writer and anthropologist known for her portrayal of racial struggles in the South. Her most famous work is the novel Their Eyes Were Watching God. Most recently, her nonfiction book written in 1931 about the story of Cujo Lewis, the last known slave ship survivor, was rediscovered and published as Barracoon. Jacob Lawrence. Jacob Lawrence was a painter best known for his 60-panel Migration series, which depicted the Great Migration, the period from 1916 to 1970, when African Americans in the South migrated to the North. In 2011, his work inspired the off-Broadway show The Migration, Reflections on Jacob Lawrence. Henry Ossawa Tanner was an artist and the first African-American painter to gain international praise for his work. His work largely dealt with biblical themes and received critical acclaim in France, where in 1923 he was appointed Chevalier of the Legion of Honor, the nation's highest order of merit. Augusta Savage. Augusta Savage was a sculptor during the Harlem Renaissance, whose art studio, Savage Studio of Arts, fostered a generation of artists, including Jacob Lawrence. In 1939, she was commissioned by the New York World's Fair and created Lift Every Voice and Sing, a 16-foot-tall sculpture that reinterpreted a harp to feature 12 singing African-American children as its strings. Phyllis Whitley, born in West Africa and sold into slavery as a child, was the first published African female poet in America. Her poems express Christian themes, but also themes that embodied the ideas of the colonialists during the American Revolution. Her book, Poems on Various Subjects, Religious and Moral, was published in 1773 and was praised by George Washington. Langston Hughes was a poet, novelist, playwright, and a major figure during the Harlem Renaissance of the 1920s. He was best known for his realistic literary portrayals of Black life in America. Along with Zora Neale Hurston and County Cullen, he established the magazine Fire for Young Black Artists. Aaron Douglas was a painter, illustrator, educator, and major figure in the Harlem Renaissance. Using African-inspired imagery in his murals and illustrations, he depicted social issues around race and segregation. He was a part of the Harlem Artists Guild, pioneering the African-American modernist movement, and founded the art department at Fisk University in Tennessee, where he taught until his retirement in 1966. An archive of his work is currently available on the National Museum of African American History and Culture's website. This is for the unafraid, and it says the Black soldiers during the Civil War. Though racial discrimination was prevalent in the military, Black soldiers served in the Civil War, providing additional manpower and playing a key role in the defeat of the Confederate Army. On September 29, 1864, at the Battle of New Market Heights, near Richmond, Virginia, United States colored troops took charge of their units after all the white commanders had fallen and succeeded in keeping the pressure on General Robert E. Lee, which would eventually lead to the city of Richmond falling to Union forces under General Ulysses S. Grant. Several of the black soldiers received medals of honor. Soldiers of distinction were also given the Butler Medal, designated by the champion of the black troops, General Benjamin Butler, and the only medal created solely for the USCT. By the end of the war, nearly 209,000 black men served as soldiers in the U.S. Army, while another 24,000 served in the U.S. Navy. Black men also had non-combatant roles to help sustain the Army, working as carpenters, cooks, surgeons, and more. Black women served in non-combatant roles as well, as they could not formally join the Army. And then it talks about all these other people, and some of these names you remember that you have heard of. So you have heard of Trayvon Martin. He was an unarmed 17-year-old African-American boy who was shot and killed by a neighborhood watchman. His death and the acquittal of his killer sparked national debate and protests worldwide, as well as statements by prominent figures such as Reverend Al Sharpton, Reverend Jesse Jackson, and President Barack Obama. Then it talks about Martin Luther King Jr., who we have talked about. He was a Baptist minister and activist, and he is probably the most well-known spokesman during the civil rights movement. He was known for his support of nonviolent civil disobedience, as well as the Montgomery bus boycott in his I Have a Dream speech at the 1963 March on Washington. In 1964, he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. And then there's Wilma Rudolph, who was a world record-holding Olympic athlete who became the first American woman and first African-American woman to win 3 gold medals in a single Olympics. Michael Jordan. We know Michael Jordan. He is a retired professional basketball player who played for the Chicago Bulls and Washington Wizards, and he's probably known as the greatest player of all times. Althea Gibson. She was a professional tennis player and golfer. She was the first person of color to win a Grand Slam title in tennis. Muhammad Ali. He was born Cassius Clay. And I happen to know that this fall there is going to be a book by Kwame Alexander all about how Cassius Clay became Muhammad Ali. I have pre-ordered it, and I recommend you keep your eyes out for that book when it comes out. He was the greatest heavyweight champion of all time and a professional boxer. During the Vietnam War, he refused to be drafted due to his religious and political beliefs. They arrested him and stripped him of his boxing titles. He appealed the decision to the Supreme Court, and he won. Sheryl Swoopes, you probably have heard of her. She is a retired basketball player. She was the first player to be signed into the women's NBA. She was a gold medalist and 3-time WNBA Most Valuable Player. We've talked about Jesse Owens. Serena Williams, professional tennis player. She is ranked number 1 8 times so far. Amazing. Reese Whitley, she is a competitive swimmer who specializes in the breaststroke. At 15, he won the silver medal in the 100-meter breaststroke. LeBron James, professional basketball player, also a great player, one of the greatest of all times. And then we have Louis Armstrong, trumpeter, Billie Holiday, amazing jazz singer, Miles Davis, probably one of the most influential jazz composers, Duke Ellington, also another very famous composer, Ella Fitzgerald, jazz singer, referred to as the First Lady of Song or the Queen of Jazz.